give it up for Mike, Arce.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. So I actually had an entirely different theme for this talk about 2 weeks ago, and I ended up actually having a really good conversation with somebody in this room, and it inspired me to kind of switch gears into an entirely different theme. So for that person that's in this room, I apologize for a little bit of repetitiveness for you, but I felt like this was something I thought more people would like to hear as well. So when I was 18 years old, I knew everything. I knew more than my parents. I knew more than my teachers. I knew more than any boss I ever had. And when I was 25, I started to question if I was actually on the right track. I expected to be rich by then. I wasn't even close. And when I turned 30, I actually had even less money than when I was 25, so I was even worse by 30. And that's when I knew for sure I didn't know stuff, like you said, right? I really wanted a lot for my life. You know, I always dreamed big, and I expected to be able to accomplish a lot of great things. I wanted people to look at me and the things that I've done and wonder, how in the world did he do that? And I look up to people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, Henry Ford, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys that have done some really great things. I never really saw a huge difference between them and I. And, you know, I would see all the books and the movies and the documentaries and the inspirational Facebook quotes with these guys in it, and I wanted that so badly for myself. And I wanted to be the guy that would be in these books, these documentaries, these movies. I wanted people to look at me like I've accomplished that. I believed at that time that the only way I could actually feel like I really accomplished anything in my life is if I could physically prove it, if people can point to it and say, there it is. And around this time, I ended up reading this story, parable. It was written by one of history's most famous thinkers, Plato. And if you've never heard of it, if you've never read it, I strongly suggest everyone here does, and read it to your kids as well. But it totally changed the way I believe things are. And it put reality in the way I believe things to be in a whole new perspective. And I started to realize for the first time that most of what we see and feel, or think we see and feel, is really just an illusion. Whether that's fear, or love, or hate, or wants, or needs, most of the time, it's really just an illusion, a creation in our own mind. So think about a time, probably think of many, when you see somebody that's afraid to do something that you know is totally not worthy of being afraid of. You guys ever see that? Whether it's your kids, your family members, your friends, maybe even yourself, where later on you look back and you go, man, I wasn't worthy of being afraid of, right? Where does that fear come from? Is it an illusion? Or when you see somebody that just got dumped, right? Just broken up with, and they're crying, I love him, I need him, I can't live without him. And then months later, they're totally living life fine, on to the next one, and sometimes even disgusted at the idea that they even like the person. You know that? How does that happen? And when people say, I need it, I need this, kids say it, I really need this, Dad, I really need, no, you don't. And even if you want it, you only want it until the next thing comes around, and then that's over with. Most of what we think we want and need is really just an illusion. And I started to think about that and my wants and my needs. My need to be seen like Steve Jobs and those guys up there. And my want to be able to look back at my life and say, I did that. And then I started to realize that I'm nothing like Steve Jobs. And the guy's done incredible stuff, changed the world. Most of you guys are using his products now, but we're different. We're very, very different. And the way he lived his life, he never really focused on leadership. His loyalty to the people in his life was practically non-existent for most of his life. And my relationship with the people in my life is so far different that I could never authentically be like him, right? It'd be so inauthentic. And so I started to think about that more and more. And I started to think about, okay, what's real? What should I really start focusing on? And around this time, there was one of those shootings that happened in a school. And you guys know of the one. I'm not going to go into too much detail because some of the audience, but it was a hard thing for my wife and I to hear. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, especially parents, you're able to reflect on that time when you first heard the news and just feel it, because you can put yourself in that position. And those lives were so affected, not just the ones that were lost, but the people around them. Christmas, holidays, birthdays, Facebook memories, every year, those come back up. Those will never be the same for those families because of what this shooter did. And it's getting so mad at that person, right? Like, who could do something like this? And then I start to think about him, the shooter. What type of life did this guy go through? What type of life did he live? What person hurt him or ignored him? Was it a father that made him feel like he didn't matter? Was he not heard? Was he so terribly alone that his perspective of the world that we live in, the same world, and the value and the worth of a human life is just so far apart from what we believe that it's like going to the grocery store for him? And so I start thinking about that, and then I started thinking, what if there was just one person in that guy's life prior to him getting to this point that was able to talk to him, was able to listen to him, dream with him, make him feel like he mattered, didn't treat him like everybody else did, really knew that he was a person. He's somebody's kid, he's somebody's potential father. Would that type of conversation, that type of relationship change the trajectory of that guy's life to where the shooting never happens? Now, that person that reached out and talked to him and dreamt with him, did all that stuff to make this shooter never become a shooter, that person could have been a humble mechanic, could have been a cook at a local restaurant, but that guy's a hero. Would you agree? That guy, without knowing it, saved thousands of lives, because not just the hundreds that were lost, but the thousands that were changed forever. The thousands of lives that were never to be, because those kids would have had kids and grandkids. Who knows what would have become. And you think about the people now, these families, that they enjoy Christmas, they enjoy birthdays, they enjoy holidays, they love seeing Facebook memories, they reshare them every year, every day. And it could be you guys, it could be me, that we're living a life that we had no idea exists because of one person 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And that guy is a hero. That guy means so much to us. I like to believe that one day, when our time is up and we cross over to the other side, I like to believe that there's this awesome feature that allows us to be able to look back, not at all that we could have physically seen in the world that we saw, but the impact that we weren't able to see. The hundreds of lives that we potentially might have saved, the thousands of things that we may have actually created just by having real, thoughtful conversations, authentic conversations with people that need it the most. Everyone in here, without knowing it, because there's no physical evidence at the end of your life, your physical life, all of you in here might actually have an impact 10 times greater than Steve Jobs' mere physical impact. And you never know it until you cross over. You just have to believe that. We're all wired to know when we're doing something right and wrong. We feel it. We got to follow that feeling. We got to teach our kids to follow that feeling. And I know I was brought up here, Peter knows me as a CEO of this company. It's doing pretty well. And maybe thought I was going to be sharing some business strategies and stuff like that. But I chose this talk because I realized that I couldn't get to success, my definition of success, until I was really able to define it. And to me, that was leading a household with a family that does good things, that knows what good is, that knows to follow their good wiring. that cares about people, that treats everyone the way they should be treated, makes people feel like they matter, like they're important. I wanted to be able to have a home big enough to have my ridiculously large family. I not only have 4 kids, but I have like 80,000 cousins. But I want to be able to have them over. I wanted to be able to travel the world and see different cultures and how they perceive the world and how they raise their children, how they work. And I wanted to be able to never have to look at the right side of a menu. That's something for me. I don't normally go out to eat. We do a lot at home. We do a lot of cooking, Hispanic, Italian culture. But when we do go out, I want to get what I want, not what I believe I can afford. When you're setting up your goals and the things that you want, I want you to think about you and what your wiring tells you you'll want. Don't think about it the last day of your life. I think everyone says that. Think about on the last day of your life, what would you like to say you've done? Forget that. Look at the next dimension. Look past you, way past the end of your life. Look at the end of your dimension and the thousands of years after you've gone and what might have happened because of the things that you've done, that ripple effect that's so incredible. And those things are not necessarily measured by doing extraordinary things, but by doing ordinary things in an extraordinary way. Thank you.